Welcome to NFL Daily, where we cannot wait to talk about an entire slate of Week 1 games. I'm Gregg Rosenthal here in the Chris Wesseling podcast studio with Patrick Claybon. Nick Shook reporting live from Cleveland. We won't mention what happened in Cleveland, at least not for a game, because we want to keep the spirits high. What is happening, Patrick?
Greg, I'm so juiced. I'm juiced because it's Week 1 and nothing's hit me yet. We just wrapped up 3 hours of football, and I'm going to talk some more football because I'm walking in the newsroom. Chris Rose is fired up on game day highlights, and now I feel like I got to match his freak. I got to match his energy.
No one can match Chris Rose's freak or the volume, the just incredible amount of voice that comes out of him is ridiculous. I don't want you to do that either, Shook, but I am happy you're going to be here every Sunday night through the Sunday night football game with us, and you're wearing your Madden, shirt proudly. But this is better than Madden. This is the real thing.
Yes, this is the real thing, and hopefully you guys can send that energy in my direction, about 2,000 miles east, where everybody around here right now feeling pretty down, not getting me down.
Yeah.
I'm going to drive it up for the show.
Yes. The Browns, they were in a highlight game, but let's face it, America's game of the week was not the game of the week. I'm choosing Texans Colts as the game of the week, where C.J. Stroud reminded us just what a special young quarterback he is.
3rd and 11. Stroud fires, and it is broken up by Jones, but on the sideline, Collins may have caught it. Unbelievable!
This is an unreal catch by Nico Collins.
Jones was all over him, and Collins somehow still brought it in.
It looked like Jones undercut this ball and had a chance to intercept it, but as we get into this replay, Nico Collins corrals it, and in his left knee hits inbounds catch for Houston Texans and a first down.
Not often we start a highlight with a 12-yard pass, but C.J. Stroud is so good at the little things. Nico Collins is so good at the little things. Of course, that was the CBS coverage there. Tiki Barber on the call. We'll also hear the local Houston call in just a little bit on some throws. And look, I thought the Colts were getting the ball back. This was a back-and-forth game. These two second-year players just delivering highlight after highlight in this one, and it's hard not to compare him. And Anthony Richardson's great and had a great game overall and delivered some great highlights, but I do think they're different. And C.J. Stroud is the one, to me, Patrick, more likely to go through his progressions and hit a throw that just didn't look like it was possible to hit to put the game away. What a mature second-year player.
I mean, we're in the 20s of quarterbacks that don't even attempt that throw to Nico Collins. It was an exceedingly dangerous attempt with draped in coverage. Nico comes up with the catch. He had 6 for 117 on the day. Mm-hmm. You saw the emphasis on getting this talent around him. Joe Mixon comes over. I don't think they're going to load Joe Mixon up with carries. He has 30 attempts for 159 yards.
Oh, they had to do it because it was so effective.
Like, back and forth, both of these guys went. Anthony Richardson was like the bizarro Bo Nix on the day, just taking deep shot after deep shot. He hit a couple. Hit that. We'll get a chance to see the other one. To Alec Pierce, but just a fun game with two of the best in the game. But right now, it's not just Anthony Richardson that's looking up to catch C.J. Stroud. I think it's a lot of quarterbacks in the league. They're going to have to contend with this guy just being so good so early.
Right. I wanted to talk Stroud first because you mentioned the running game. It's why they were in this game. Mixon gets those 30 carries. He finishes with 159 yards. I realized, Nick, that the running game was so different than it was a year ago immediately. First of all, the Colts, I think they have a good front. Maybe they're better rushing the passer than they are stopping the run. But I knew it was different when Dameon Pierce is getting 5 yards per carry, because that's like an A/B test. That was not happening last year. So they're blowing open holes, and they did not protect C.J. Stroud all day. This is the game I watched the closest all day, and he goes 24 for 32 for 234 and 2 touchdowns. And you think, like, okay, good, solid C.J. Stroud game. But that last play was typical of a day where he was under duress. The Colts actually had more pressures. Like, they had 5 different defensive linemen with over 3 pressures, like 4 of the defensive linemen with 4 or more pressures, and he still made it happen. If it was any other quarterback, maybe not any other quarterback, but just about any other quarterback. Like, they wouldn't have been able to deal with all the pressure that the very good Colts defensive line sent at him, and he kept them on schedule enough and had some big third and longs. That Nico Collins one was not the only one.
Yeah, and this is precisely why I put CJ Stroud at number 4 in the first QB index of 2024, because I got a lot of pushback on this week. Totally fine. Oh, he had one season. But I'm telling you, this guy's a special kid, and plays like that are why he is a top 5 quarterback. 75 to 85% of the league is not making those type of plays under that type of duress. If you need examples, I could give you a ton just from today. Usually guys get frazzled. They break down. Their brain short circuits when they get that much pressure all day. And in a tight game on the road, CJ Stroud in his second season delivers in the clutch to put a game away. That's the type of special player he is.
So I'm overdosing on the next-gen stats this year that for some reason I didn't think to have access to. He goes 7 for 9 against pressure today, 12.1 yards per attempt, plus 32% completion percentage over expected. So that says it all. So to me, it was a really good sign that they were able, to run the ball. That was so different than last year. You would think that the pass protection gets cleaned up. I didn't think it was going to be this close of a game. They were up 15-7 early in the third quarter. They got up 28-20, but the Colts, kept grinding. And Anthony Richardson, you mentioned, Patrick, was a big playmaker. He kept going deep. Alec Pierce had a 60-yarder and a 57-yarder in this game. And the throw that Anthony Richardson made in the first quarter, I submit, at the end of the year, let's just start making a list. Put this down, the throws of the year. This is my submission. Maybe it won't be the only one, but it's definitely one for this week. I submit this throw from Anthony Richardson in the very first quarter of the year will be on our end of the year top 10 throws of the year.
5.5 minutes to go, first quarter. Indianapolis trails 3-0, but they've got it now first and 10 on their own 40. Richardson on play action, backs to throw. He slips on the turf, gets up, heaves it downfield, looking for Alec Pierce. He's got it! Touchdown! A bomb! 60 yards! Anthony Richardson to Alec Pierce. That's what you're talking about in the deep game. Touchdown! INDY!
That is absolutely preposterous. He slips on the play. It goes 65 yards in the air. That is the third longest completion in the next-gen stats era. So I immediately got a pushback because I had tweeted this out. It's like, that's going to be one of the best throws. Dude, like, really, Greg, overreact much in the first quarter? It's like, no, I've seen a lot of throws. I've very rarely seen a ball go 65 yards in the air to that in perfect stride. And that's kind of what you get with Richardson, Nick, that 9 for 19 on the day, but he gets 212 yards. He missed some throws. His interception in his defense came on a play where his receiver slipped, but he also missed some other third downs that were just not on target. So he makes those sort of big plays. And then when they're trailing late, down a couple scores, 4th and goal on the goal line, and he gets stopped as a runner a couple yards before the end zone, and he just carries the defenders like Cam Newton in his prime into the end zone. And like, I thought they had a good chance to win if they had just stopped that 3rd and 11. They were going to get the ball back. He ends up being their leading rusher with 56 yards as well.
Yeah, and so we know he's going to miss some throws because his mechanics aren't the cleanest, and that's been the case for him since he came out of Florida, where he didn't really play that much. But I think it's really fitting, and this is also because of where he got drafted, that in the same stadium in which he wowed everyone with these rainbow passes that were just seemingly effortless, flick of the wrist, he slips, he's under duress, and he just does the same thing he did in his workout at the Combine a couple of years ago. Flicks it down the field, majestic touchdown pass. Like, that's the type of stuff that you expect from a guy that you draft in the top 5. That's why you ignore the inconsistencies from here to there, because of the big play potential, both in the passing game and the running game. And you were right. I saw that highlight of him scoring that touchdown and running through that defender, because I'm watching him approach the goal line. I'm like, I know he scores here, but how does he get in? Oh, wait, he's built like Cam Newton. And we haven't seen a guy like that since Cam Newton. So I think he's here to stay as long as he stays healthy. And you're just going to have to deal with some of the inconsistencies because the big plays are so worth it.
Yeah, it was a really fun game. I would recommend it highly if you're into hitting some Game Pass during the week. You'll see, he missed A.D. Mitchell a couple times deep, one on a play where they created, but I think both teams come out with some positives. But a huge road win in the division to start the season for the Texans, really where they left off last year when they won the division in Lucas Oil Stadium. All right, let's go to America's quote-unquote game of the week. I do think this is the second most interesting game of the week just because of – why are you laughing, Patrick?
Well, it was the look on Shook's face.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not, laughing at Shook's misery, but it was just appropriate.
Okay, there were better games this week, but there was just a lot going on between Tom Brady and Dak, and then two teams going into the week that we were like, what are these two teams going to be like? One of them gave us a pretty good answer. That was the Dallas Cowboys.
York is standing in the middle of his own end zone. The kick actually comes from the goal line. A little end-over-end wobbler taken at the 40 by Turpin. Trying to get up the middle, 50, 45, get a block. Right sideline, 30, he's pointing. 20 to the 15, to the 10. There's your return. Cavante Turpin with a 60-yard punt return.
That was Cavante Turpin. And, of course, that was Brad Sham from KRLD, former around the NFL guest, Brad Sham. Getting it done there. Dallas 33, Browns 17. I could have picked some nice Dak Prescott throws. Had a 21-yard touchdown pass to Brandon Cooks under pressure. Thought he handled the Browns defense. I could have picked one of the 6 sacks that the Dallas Cowboys had of Deshaun Watson, who looked lost and harried. And this was a game that was ugly for the Browns, but it was beautiful for the Cowboys, Shooky.
Yeah, first off, all those pieces that we read in the offseason about Mike Zimmer's going to make this defense into a monster kind of came true today.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really because he didn't give a damn what the Browns were going to do. They had no fear. He just dialed up blitz after blitz after blitz. Oh, both of your starting tackles are out? Guess who's going to capitalize on that all day? I am, Mike Zimmer, the defensive coordinator who's here to ruin your dreams in one Sunday afternoon. And that's exactly what he did. Deshaun Watson was pressured 44.6% of his dropbacks. They were after him all day. This offense had no chance to go anywhere, and it was all because of that Dallas defense. And some of the final stats you see, like Trevon Diggs' interception, that was just icing on the cake because they had already dominated and had this game in hand. Really an impressive performance from them. And on the offensive side, honestly, Greg, I know we are all worried about the Cowboys. Could this be the year they collapse? Well, they get the contract done with Dak right before the game, right? And then Mike McCarthy goes out there and he just runs circles around the Browns staff, like just operating an offense that's taking what they're giving them. Just piece by piece, 3rd and 3, we're going to pick up 5, 2nd and 10, we're going to pick up 6, all the way down the field. Oh, you're going to blitz us on 3rd down, Jim Schwartz, because that's what you like to do? Yeah, Dak, throw it up on the slot, fade, wide open, Brandon Cooks, touchdown. They were one step ahead all afternoon.
Okay, so they end up with 265 yards. When Tom Brady, and we'll get to Brady in a minute, said, when he did the on-camera shot late in the game, and they're talking about how the Cowboys should feel, and he's like, he thinks they should feel great, and he talked about how on point the offense was and how the operation was really good. And I didn't watch this game as closely. They only have 265 yards in this game. They don't really run the ball too well. Dak finishes with 179 and 1. Was Brady overselling it there, or like how did you feel about how their offense held up, or was it like a game management situation where they really didn't need to do more?
That's what it was. It was a game management situation because the Browns turned it over on downs multiple times. They couldn't mount an effective drive that really sustained very long, save for one touchdown drive. That was it. So, like, every time they got the ball, the Browns defense played fairly well. It's just they were on the field for a long time early in the game. And then by the time the game was out of hand, they were getting stops against the Cowboys offense that was just trying to avoid making massive errors with a multi-score lead. That's essentially what it was, because when they had to actually move the ball, they had a couple of really nice drives where I was like, there's Dak, mid-season form. Zeke looks spry. Looks like he's like 3 years younger than he actually is. Everything else is cut. CeeDee Lamb looks awesome. Glad they got that deal done. Everything was fine. It's just they didn't need to push it.
I will defend the Zeke Patriot season for all time as underrated, by the way.
Yeah, it was underrated. And Zeke played well today. It was a balanced game because I think it's easier to look back, and I know the game was frustrating for Shook, but the game was in question for a little bit here because Tyler Guyton, starting his first NFL game, looking over and seeing Myles Garrett, and that was a real problem. Like, Dak had a backwards throw early in the game. Could have been a fumble. Myles got to him. Dalvin Tomlinson got to him early. But the way that Mike McCarthy utilized the run game to keep the pass rush away from Dak, it was kind of like this veteran offensive leadership, guys who had played together for a long time. We'd seen the way that they operate. They knew what they were doing. And then on the other side, Brown's missing tackles, like Micah Parsons is getting through. He's coming around on twists and stunts, and Deshaun's bouncing. Like, we're watching the game. Pep Hamilton is on Game Day Live with me, and he's like, why is Deshaun back there? Of course, Pep closely worked with Deshaun during his time in Houston. He's bouncing up and down, not necessarily at the top of his drop, stepping back. And so it was an offense that knew what it wanted to do versus an offense that clearly is just trying to figure things out.
So are you saying, Patrick Claybon, that I may have overreacted to the Cowboys offseason? I see you giggling over there like before the show.
It's because we've had a few times to chat, and I felt like this was a total thing because for some reason Mr. Jones is long playing these contract things ultimately to pay everybody anyway at detriment to his own pocketbook, which is, fine by me. But there's this attention that goes to them getting run over in the playoffs, and everybody's like, oh, the Cowboys are bad. No, they're still a good team. They've just lost these games in the playoffs, but so did the Browns.
Why did I fall for this? You know how much it hurts me that I picked the Browns in this game? It doesn't, what does it really matter which team you pick? But
it wasn't the game pick, Greg. It was the tiny table that you really hurt yourself on.
That too. Well, the Cowboys could still disappoint over the course of the season, but picking the Browns, another team I'm very down on in this game, hurts me because I haven't hid the fact that I've enjoyed Deshaun Watson in his trade being the worst move in NFL history. I thought it was at the time, even if you took away his play, and his play is an absolute disaster, and I don't need to focus on that, but from a Cowboys perspective, one thing I do want to mention just is DeMarvion Overshown and Marshawn Nealon. Two names I know not a lot of people know about. Overshown, second-year player. Nealon, more of an edge. They both look like dudes, and this defense really needs some young players to step up. Overshown, who's more of a edge outside linebacker type, looked really good in this game from what I saw, and that's really important. All right, you mentioned slow play in the contract. Let's talk about that here first before we get to Brady. $231 million guaranteed. What a day to do it on the day you're playing Deshaun Watson, a guy that never deserved that contract because of the legal situation that he was in at the time before the suspension. He gets $230 million guaranteed, and Dak is saying, I'm not signing that deal until you give me $1 more million than Deshaun, and it's a 4-year deal, so it's not short, but it's on the shorter end of these huge ones, and it's so much guaranteed money, record-setting signing bonus, and for the chaos and the fun of it all, I liked the idea of Dak Prescott going to free agency. It's not going to happen, and it shouldn't happen because the Cowboys would have been in huge problems in terms of the salary cap. They would have had so much dead cap if Dak ever left. So it doesn't surprise me that Dak Prescott got such a great contract. On the other hand, I don't know what the Browns are going to do here, Shook. I think there will be a question. This is not the week for it. It's only week 1. But if he continues like this over and over, we don't have to have this discussion every week. But I do think it'll happen at some point this season if he doesn't improve, that they would go to another quarterback.
Yeah, well, the most concerning thing about Deshaun's performance today alone, he was pressured a lot, and he really rarely had time to throw. But when he had time to throw, he had no idea where the ball was going. Sometimes it was on target. It was a great throw. Touchdown pass to Jerry Jeudy, great throw. There were other times where he'd step up in the pocket and try to take a shot deep and miss his guy by 10 yards out of bounds. 3 or 4 times he did that. He overthrew, I think it was Jeudy or Elijah Moore on a drag route, gets tipped and picked off. There's no consistency here. I think they're going to be in the market for a new quarterback. It might sound like an overreaction, but if this is the way that it goes throughout most of the season, there's no way that they go to year 4 of that contract.
Right. And I think, look, they have 2 on their roster, Jameis Winston and DTR. I think they're higher on DTR internally than people probably think. It's too early for all that, but you're right. He just doesn't look comfortable. Finally, in this game, speaking of not looking comfortable, what do we think about Tom Brady? I did have the sound on. So what I did in this game, I'm this wasn't my game, little behind the scenes. So I was really not watching it as closely because I'm watching my games closely. But I did keep the sound in my ear and earbud just to kind of get the feel of Brady. I thought he was tight. He was kind of silent early, he was a lot of pauses. And I thought he warmed up as it went. And even the warming up only got him to just okay, he's definitely better than Jason Witten. I have my doubts whether he'll ever get to Greg Olsen level, because I feel there is part of it that either you got it or you don't. But he was fine. He was in the end, I thought he was fine, but just not adding a ton.
Well, it was funny because we were talking. It was see if you have anything clippable, and I'm sitting there listening. I was there's nothing good for it.
Right, we wanted a sound clip to play, but it wasn't there.
But at the same time, here's how I describe Tom Brady's debut on broadcast television as a color commentator. At times, he seemed very nervous. At times, there was a big opening for him to jump in and give some analysis, and it just went dead air, which I was like, talk, Tom, talk. But what I think he could be, he has the knowledge of a Tony Romo without the presence of a Tony Romo. You could tell that times he wanted to nerd out. There was a couple times where he's getting on the telestrator and he's going, oh, look, man coverage on Amari Cooper here. And then he would stop himself right in his tracks as if he doesn't know his place and he doesn't want to step on Kevin Burkhardt's toes. Kevin's going to give you all the space in the world. You're Tom freaking Brady. Let that knowledge flow, baby. And so I think over time he'll get better, but like a C- performance today at best.
I have a theory.
Okay.
Do you guys, anybody listening, if you're watching on YouTube, hear how seamlessly Shook weaved freaking in there? That's what Tom Brady is a noted sayer of swear words. And I feel that Tom, being on TV for the first time for an extended amount of time, was constantly checking himself out of F-bombs. That is my theory. Did not get to hear a single part of the game because, we're on.
Yeah.
But that would be my guess.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that.
There were some stops, like in the middle of sentences. There were some moments where he just stopped abruptly. So maybe it was.
That's my theory.
That's a great one because I want a more aggro Tom. Like I was listening in the second half for him to be a little more critical of Deshaun Watson. Didn't get that. They didn't really meet the moment when Brandon Aubrey was lining up for an NFL-tying 66-yard field goal, and he nailed it. And the Cowboys didn't take a timeout, and it was a delay of game. They snapped it just after, and they sort of missed that whole thing that it was even happening as it was happening. But kudos to you, Brandon Aubrey. I believe you are going to set this record at some point
almost
this
had a chance
year.
Today.
I mean, yeah, they were thinking about going for a 71-yarder, and he hit the 66-yarder. I saw it with my own eyes. It just didn't count. Let's move on to our next game. Josh Allen. All 4 of his touchdowns did count.
Allen in the shotgun, Kincaid and Cook in the backfield on either side of him. 2 receivers to the left. Cook in late motion. Here's the snap. Looks to the right flat to Cook. Now steps up in the pocket, throws. Now he's going to run. And the beast has once again been released. Josh Allen with a 6-yard touchdown romp. His second rushing touchdown of the day. 4 total touchdowns from the Bills QB.
Shout out to Chris Brown, who got the full-time job over there at WGR as the Bills radio voice. Nice come up. I remember Chris Brown as the website guy when I was starting 20 years ago. I would go on. So good job by Chris Brown. Great call there. And yeah, the beast, Josh Allen, with a very Josh Allen stat line, 18 for 23, over 10 yards per attempt, 232 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 more on the ground. And look, the Cardinals made the Bills work. They made everyone who took them in survivor pools like me sweat. 17-3 lead in this game, but Josh Allen brought them all the way back. They put up 34, and they got it done, Patrick Claybon.
And they did. And it was a nice start by the Arizona Cardinals. And I had taken the Cardinals to win this game strictly based on the defense of the Buffalo Bills having to adjust. They did cover, but they didn't get the W, which is what I not necessarily wanted, but is what I predicted. And late, they did have an opportunity before the 4th down pass to Greg Dortch, who, the Cardinals fans will tell you he was interfered with. It certainly appeared on the field. The referees didn't make the call. But the play before that on 3rd down, Marvin Harrison Jr. was all by himself behind the Buffalo Bills for what would have been a game-tying touchdown. They could have won it with the extra point, but Kyler did not get his eyes up there in time. Wound up being an incomplete pass, but the Cardinals fall. A solid start. James Conner played well in this game. He had 16 carries, 50 yards. It was big in the receiving game as well, had 3 catches. Greg Dortch was the team's leading receiver. Kyler played well, ran for 57 yards on the ground, but ultimately Arizona couldn't deal with Josh Allen being a giant mechanized destroyer of worlds to his own detriment because he did hurt his left hand. He told Tiffany Blackman after the game it's not necessarily a problem. They did have it wrapped up. But just too much Josh around the goal line, and if the team does anything, it's going to be because 17 does it, and right now he's doing all of it. But James Cook played well, but it's all Josh Allen.
Right. Like, Josh Allen running the ball is the most successful play in football. I'm not exaggerating, like literally by the numbers. It's by far the most successful running play. And it, like, again today, 9 rushes, 39 yards doesn't sound crazy, but a success rate of like 78% on those runs. Like per run, he is the most effective runner in the NFL. partly because he knows when to do it, and he does it so often in the red zone, and it ends up in 7 points. Marvin Harrison, 3 targets, 4 yards.
What's going on here? 1 catch, 4 yards? What's going on? Hello. You have, like, the best receiver in the class, and Joel Klatt's been saying he's going to be a top 5 NFL receiver for 3 years. Throw him the football.
Trey McBride took a lot of those targets. He had 9 of them. Greg Dortch had 8. There was a play early on in the game where Kyler and Marvin weren't necessarily on the same page on a back shoulder thing. I don't know if it's a trust thing that needs to develop, but Kyler definitely had him. If you guys get a chance to see that play, Marvin Harrison is doing jumping jacks in the end zone, just a brutal whiff, and a closing game situation could have gone totally different for Arizona.
Right, and they were in that situation, the Cardinals, because of a very exciting play. Just to set this up, the Bills had just taken a 31-20 lead. So for as exciting as the first half was of this game, really most of the first 2 quarters, it's 17-3 until late in the first half. The Bills then put it on them and go on a 28-3 run there to take a lead 31-20. The game seemed all but over until the dynamic kickoff got really freaking dynamic.
Bass will be kicking into the wind. Again, he's got to get it past the 20, and the wind is whipping as we look to our left at the flags on the top of each upright. This one hangs in the air. It'll make it past the 20, but it's taken on the 5-yard line by Dallas. Up the middle, 10, 20, 30, 35. Dallas to the 40, breaks the tackle. Far side of midfield, 45-40. Dallas 35-30, 25-20. Dallas to the 10, to the 5, dives into the end zone. It's a touchdown for the Cardinals. A kickoff return for a score, and Arizona's right back in the game.
Let's go. We got the first kickoff return in the dynamic touchdown world.
You gotta feel it.
It works.
It's dynamic.
KMVP, that was Dave Pash. I'm taking that as a victory. You know, everyone's disappointed that there's so many touchbacks. There were a lot of touchbacks before. I'll have to look at the numbers to see if it's changed much. Here's what I think it did, is it helped field position, and scoring was pretty solid throughout the league. Although the passing numbers were crazy low. I saw a stat from the AP that more starting quarterbacks had less than 200 yards in this week 1 than any in a really long time. That includes Kyler, who got 162 yards. But 1 kickoff return in 1 week, that sounds like a victory for me. And, yeah, shout out to the Bills. That's what good teams do. They were in a tough spot. I think they're going to be an offense-first type of team. They put up 34 points in this game to make the comeback, and the Bills get the victory. Let's take a quick break, and we will be back right after this. It's one of the Bills' division rivals. Back in the Chris Wesseling podcast studio for the very first Sunday night recap for NFL Daily. And yeah, it's time for the Sunday drive by the all-new hybrid Toyota Camry, and we're going to take that drive down to Miami. I just want to set up this play for you and the moment of the game. 17-7, Jaguars are leading, 2:27 left in the third quarter. It looks like the Jaguars are going to pull off the upset in Miami.
Give it to ATN. He breaks the tackle up the falls out. It's rolling into the end zone. The Dolphins recovered with Kader Kahu on top of the football. That's exactly what Miami needed.
It looked like he might score. What a crazy play.
The ruling on the field is a fumble in the field of play.
Oh, what a play. Javon
Holland knocked it free. Kader Kahu fell on it in the end zone.
Javon Holland just made a big-time play at safety.
That was one of the best peanut punches I've ever seen in my life. If you're watching our show on YouTube, we've got our highlights. We've got the sound, trying to be unlike any show out there. And that play absolutely turned the game. Reminded me so much of Antoine Winfield's punch on the Panthers, which actually got them into the playoffs last year on a touchdown that was going in. And it felt even bigger. Eric, let's throw it to another play right away, because the next play in the game was this one.
Play action, fake to it, back to throw, wants a deep one. Downfield, he's got Tyreek. Tyreek at the 40, 35, 30, down the sideline he goes. Touchdown, Miami.
Oh, my gosh. Speed kills once again. Tyreek Hill to the house.
80 yards.
Why do they have to do the shot to Travis Etienne sat on the sideline right after the touchdown? It's like
it let me know because I looked up because I wasn't watching that particular game at that time, but I saw the touchdown and then I saw Travis Etienne, and you instantly make the connection. Oh, it must have been his fault.
Yeah, it was. And it was just such a moment because to that point in the game, they had done such a good job holding Tyreek Hill in check. It was actually like, hey, how come Tyreek and Tua aren't going down the field? Then he finishes with 7 for 130 and touchdown. That to me was the biggest play anyone made all day was Javon Holland in that punch out. And then after the Tyreek Hill, the very next play, I just want to play this for the joy of having Kevin Harlan back in our life. Let's listen.
When you consider how it began, this baby will be line drive, and it will be taken. Washington will grab it. Oh, he fumbled the ball! Miami's got it! Miami's got it! Calamity!
I got to say, I know I've been saying football is back all day and all week and all year, but that I really felt like football was back when Kevin Harlan just yells out, "Calamity!" And actually, the Dolphins somehow got it back the Jaguars got it back at the bottom of the pile. And it wasn't quite as big a calamity, but it kind of was in this game. Patrick, Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars offense was great, really efficient in the first half. He was 9 for 14 for 125 yards and a touchdown in the first half. Didn't have the ball much in the second half. He ends up only throwing 7 throws after halftime, 3 of 7 for 37 yards, and their offense just didn't get anything going, and the Dolphins end up getting the win.
And Trevor taking some of the blame there, said there were a couple of throws that he had that he wishes he could have. There was incompletion to Christian Kirk as well. That was a drop in that second half.
Yes, a big drop by Kirk in the first half, too, so that it was not the best game for Christian Kirk.
It's just those 6 or 7 plays, which, again, feels like a lot, but this could have easily been a Jags blowout, but ultimately the Dolphins make the plays that they need to do to win the game.
So I just ran down the drive chart. 23 total plays. I think it was 23, 24 total plays in the second half. They had one drive of more than 4 plays, and it was the drive that ended in the ETN fumble, which I know, Greg, you said, hey, shades of Antoine Winfield. For me, as soon as I saw it, I thought, oh, man, for the love of Ernest Biner, why would you do that to the Jaguars in week 1 like that? It feels like a game that the Jaguars had right there. And yet when you play teams like this, you can have it right there. And unless you close, more often than not, it slips through your fingers and you're left walking away thinking, what could have been? We could have came in here and stole a win. And that's probably how they're feeling. There's a lot to feel good about. And yet you walk away 0-1 and got to figure out how to clean up those little things. Bummer for them. But again, nice little feather in the cap for the Dolphins fans who had quite an adventurous day anyway.
Yes. Let's talk about their adventure. Tyreek Hill was detained by police before the game. It turns out that he's not going to be charged with anything. Let's actually listen to Tyreek Hill with Melanie Collins of CBS asked about what happened before the game.
What did it mean to you for your teammates to join you this morning and show support?
Bro, I love that. I was fired up, dog, to see Joe New, to see Calais, right there in the heat of the battle with me, man. That goes to show that, man, it's more than about football, dog. Like the brotherhood that we got outside of just football is amazing, dog.
Free my dog.
Hey, free Cheetah, baby.
So he's saying free Cheetah. They're having fun with it. It was strange. Yeah, he mentioned Calais Campbell went down there. Calais Campbell talked with our Cam Wolf and talked about that had never happened to him. The internal affairs, there was an internal investigation that Miami-Dade PD announced, and they're putting one officer on administrative duties right now because of it, saying basically there was a dispute between Tyreek Hill after some sort of traffic incident, and now the officer is actually getting put on administrative leave.
And ultimately, my assumption, and again, not being there, all we have is the video from the bystanders, and it's my perception, right, that Calais Campbell and Tyreek Hill might not have gotten to play that game if not for the bystanders taking the video, because ultimately Calais Campbell got handcuffed, showing up to support his teammate, try to figure out what was going on. And there was a video of an officer striking Tyreek Hill while he was cuffed as well. And so it would, the assumption would be that particular officer might be the one that's going on administrative leave. But this is, we saw it, right? Jeff Darlington there again. We saw it with Scotty Scheffler making his way to the Open in Kentucky. Goes around some cones. We're not sure exactly what happened with Tyreek Hill, but ultimately he and Calais are able to get to the game, but it was a dicey situation, and we're just going to have to figure out what exactly happened.
Yeah, what a strange way for them to start their season. Yeah, Tyreek Hill was not on the field for like his normal warm-up, so it really was a delay and just craziness. We'll continue to update everything around this story if more happens. Just one last thing on the Jaguars. I think they're going to get what they wanted out of Brian Thomas Jr. 4 for 47 and a touchdown in this game, but also had a 50-yard pass interference where he beat Jalen Ramsey pretty clean. The touchdown was on a play where he beat zone coverage, but Jalen Ramsey and a safety, and he makes a nice toe tap for the touchdown. Then the one catch that Christian Kirk did not drop was a 30-yarder where all the coverage went deep down the field to Thomas as he's burning through them, and then opens up the middle for Kirk. So there were some good things in this game. Trayvon Walker had a couple sacks. For the most part, I thought Miami's offensive line, all the concerns that they had were warranted. They could not run the ball. Tua was under some pressure early, but as the game went on, actually, Tua was able to hold the ball a little more, and Mike McDaniel said Tua did a really good job on his big plays, getting further in the progression than he's used to. So, you talk about how Tua always gets rid of the ball so quickly. He actually held on to the ball longer than usual in this game and hit 2 big plays because of it. So that all set up what we hadn't even mentioned happened in this game. Jason Sanders, one of the most reliable kickers in the game. He hit the kick to tie it with 4 minutes left when the Dolphins drive bogged down, and then he was set up for a 52-yarder. I mean, this is no gimme to try to win the game. Let's listen before we go to Joe Cephalo and Joe Rose on WBGG, our first walk-off.
Now they're set. Ferguson, the long snapper. Bailey, the holder. Sanders will swing that right leg. Hold is down, kick is up. And the Miami Dolphins have won this football game 20-17 over the Jaguars.
What a comeback. What a comeback for the Miami Dolphins. That's what winning teams do right there, man.
Normally, I would say the weather had a big factor. It was like 95 degrees there, but they were playing against the Jaguars, so I don't know if the weather, because it really felt like the Dolphins had so much heat in the second half, and the Jaguars kind of ran out of energy.
It was a big kick from Jason Sanders, considering he absolutely power hooked one.
Yes,
earlier.
One of the worst kicks you'll ever see.
I might have made it to the side of the stands and not necessarily making it out of the back of the end zone, but a nice kick to finish things off. Tua hanging in there late. You mentioned what Coach Mike Mack said about getting in late in his progressions. There was that one ball to Jalen Waddle down the side.
That was the other one he was talking about.
It was just a great completion, a good connection between those guys. Waddle left the game for a little bit, came back in, but just a gutty win.
Gutty win by, 2 teams in the AFC East today, Miami Dolphins, Buffalo Bills. Maybe there'll be one more in a little bit, but that's not the game we're talking about next. We're going down where it got grimy in the dirty South. It was the Steelers and the Falcons.
Here we go, Steelers chant coming up as Cousins gets the snap. Looking, T.J. Watt gets there, and T.J. Watt slings him down. On the play that will end this game, T.J. Watt bows to the crowd, kicks up the leg, and finishes off this victory for the Steelers.
Oh, yeah, the Steelers fans in Atlanta, it sounded like there was a lot of them. I know they sold out their season tickets, but Pittsburgh travels well, Shooky.
Airport.
Yeah, 18-10. The Steelers win the game. A very Steelers score, Nick. Did it look as Steelersy as the score indicates?
Oh, yeah. I mean, shades of the steel curtain. Maybe not in terms of total defensive ability or potential, but the way they played, my God. First off, Cam Hayward, still a menace inside.
Ooh.
TJ Watt, still a nightmare off the edge. TJ Watt had 2 strip sacks that didn't count because one, he was offside for, which understandably, and then the other one, there was a defensive hold in the secondary. He could have been even better than he was, and he completely changed this game by himself. Kirk Cousins was completely off rhythm. He was uncomfortable the entire game. I don't care if there's rust off the injury or not. It was because of guys like TJ Watt. That pass rush, Larry Ogunjobi, some of the guys in the interior causing problems, destroying this Falcons line, which is supposedly supposed to be pretty good. Wasn't very good today. And all the Steelers needed was field goals. They didn't even need to get in the end zone because that's how good their defense played.
Oh, the rare 18 by way of 6 field goals. Yeah, I did see the Steelers go for it on 4th down, trying to put the game away late. It was a 4th and goal with Fields, and they didn't get it. And yeah, the Falcons stayed in this game forever when it felt like maybe they were going to get the knockout punch, but the Steelers couldn't do it. Cousins was under pressure almost 40% of his throws, which is a high number. Both of his interceptions came on plays where he was pressured. And yeah, pretty disappointing start there for Kirk O'Chain. 16 for 26, 155 yards, that touchdown, and 2 picks.
Similar.
Yeah,
oh, go ahead, Chuck.
The pressure throws real quick, Patrick. This is what it was with Kirk. I think he came from a system in Minnesota where he was like, you know what, I trust a guy's going to be there and I'm going to throw it under pressure, because he was pretty good at that in Minnesota. That is not how it panned out today. I mean, he was throwing into traffic without even seeing the traffic because he was anticipating the pressure, especially in the second half. Both of his interceptions in the second half, feels a guy bearing down on him, and he just throws it, and you can see him almost wincing as he's throwing it. Like, I know I'm going to get blasted, and I got to get rid of this. Directly into the stomach of a defender, underthrows a ball down the sideline that's easily intercepted. It just felt like this was not the Kirk that we knew from before, because he was harassed so much that he just never got comfortable, and that's what produced the turnovers.
From the start to the finish, because there was a play by Dante Jackson earlier in the game where Kirk hit him in the face mask. It was the Steelers were all over the Falcons pass game for the duration, and not just due to the pressure. They were actually clamping them up in the secondary as well. Drake London and Kyle Pitts having some difficulty separating at some points. Kyle Pitts did get loose on a busted coverage, and Kirk was able to find him. If not for that, the Falcons offense really had nothing to speak of other than some solid Bijan runs.
Right. Bijan gets 111 yards from scrimmage. Had 5 catches for 43 yards as part of that. The rest of the team only had 115. So, the main guys are on the field now. We've solved that problem, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, but it wasn't nearly enough. They end up with only 226 yards. I mean, that is meager, and it's why I picked this upset on Game Day View. I don't care.
You got me.
Because the Steelers defense was the only group in this game that I trusted. And yeah, the Steelers offense didn't do that much, but Justin Fields did not turn the ball over. We have a picture of Russell Wilson, who was inactive for this game. He tweaked his calf during the week. We had told you about that. He was not on the field, but he did wear his shoulder pads and showed off a new shaved haircut. Maybe that's been the case all camp, but I hadn't seen it yet. But yes, shoulder pads despite being inactive. Justin Fields spoke after the game, just talking about, what he is thinking about as the starting quarterback, at least for week 1 of this team.
I just came in wanting a win, and I'm glad that we're leaving here with a win. So in terms of who's starting, who's not, all I want to do is win at the end of the day. So, I'm really not even, going to get into all of that, who I want to start, At the end of the day, I came here to win, no matter if I was going to throw for 300 yards, 100 yards, no yards, I came here to win. So that's the only focus I had.
137 yards on the ground for the Steelers. 57 of those were from Justin Fields, 70 from Najee Harris. Only 133 passing yards net, so they were much more effective on the ground. They forced 3 turnovers, a very Steelers win, nice win for them. A very similar scoreline happened in Cincinnati, but the result was pretty darn surprising.
Stevenson has fumbled once today. He got it back himself. He's behind Brissett, who's under center. Hooper, one of 2 tight ends, right. Henry to the left. To give to Ramondre. Starts right, cuts it back to the inside, and he's going to nearly slip away from a defender, but he picks up a first down nonetheless. He gets to the Cincinnati 44. He was in the grasp of a defensive back, Cam Taylor-Britt, a cornerback, and Ramondre, although he couldn't slip away altogether for a touchdown run, he nonetheless has a first down run.
Put that man in bubble wrap.
That's right. That was Scott Zolak on WBZ. Bob Sochi on the call. I can't decide if I'm completely embarrassed and, just not enjoying Scott Zolak's calls at all, or appreciative of that. He's such a perfect representative of the region in which I grew up. I mean, he is the Patriots announcer that we deserve. Ramondre Stevenson gets it done. What a win. 16-10. I'm back.
He's back in.
I'm back in. I mean, when Drake May starts, I'm even more back in. But you get an opening win. You put the Gatorade bath on Gerard Mayo, one of my favorite Patriots when he was a player. Robert Kraft gives him the game ball afterwards. You win as the biggest underdog of the week. You knock Patrick Claybon out of our Survivor picks in week 1. It's over. And yeah, then I'm back in. Tell me something about this game, Shook, because I actually didn't see any of it.
Well, you didn't miss much from the Bengals, who essentially sleptwalked through the first 3-ish quarters of the game. They basically found every reason they could to make a mistake and give the Patriots more opportunities. But what this really was, Greg, and I'm speaking to your Patriots heart right now, this was 2022 Jacoby Brissett leading the Browns and Nick Chubb's in the backfield, except the names are different because it's Ramondre Stevenson now. The Patriots, despite all the concerns we had about their offensive line in the preseason, dominated at the point of attack, and Stevenson was the hammer through that point, picking up extra yards, breaking tackles. I mean, the stats don't lie on this guy. He ran hard and he powered this offense, and Jacoby did exactly what you wanted him to, which was manage the game, find a way to keep drives going, pick up first downs occasionally with his legs, and just don't make mistakes. And they left the door cracked for the Bengals in the fourth quarter. In fact, I had a buddy at the game, and I'm texting him going, I know your team's struggling right now, but they're going to win 14-13. And then they didn't, because the Patriots put it away. They refused to give him the ball back, and they got a stop on defense deep in the Bengals' own territory late. And Zach Taylor punted, and I thought, he's punting? Well, he's got all 3 timeouts, but you really think you're going to get a stop here with the running game involved? And they didn't. So hats off to the Patriots and Gerard Mayo.
Yeah, not stopping Ramondre today, averaging 4.8 yards per carry. The key moments in the game, Mike Gesicki has a touchdown in the corner. Turns out the ball pops out of his hands as he hits the ground, and then he slides out of bounds, so it's incomplete. The very next play, Joe Burrow hits Tanner Hudson up the middle of the seam, but Kyle Duggar punches the ball out right at the 1-yard line. The Patriots recover from then on. It was the Bengals just kept having key errors at key moments to kind of waste a solid Joe Burrow game. He was 21-29. But nothing much else to speak of.
Right. They didn't have the ball that much. So this is the Patriots' formula. 9 possessions only for each team. You're not as good, you shorten the game. If you can get 1 or 2 long drives, stay on the field. They had a 14 85-yard touchdown play drive. They also had 2 other 12-play long field goal drives. I'm shocked that they were able to move the Bengals. But if you look at the Bengals up front, that's their biggest team weakness, is they're not very heavy. You should be able to run on them. You were able to run on them last year. I'm just surprised that the Patriots were able to execute it. We did have a correspondent at this game, Nick Wesseling, was at the game texting me. First of all, he said multiple Mac Jones jerseys at the game, which is like, why? Come on. I know you bought it, but come on. And then he said there are certain things in life that you can count on, death taxes, and the Bengals losing in week 1. They have been bad under Zach Taylor early in the season. 2 bad lost fumbles. I think they only had 2 lost all of last year, which is crazy. He didn't see the identity on the offense. Jamar Chase, had a decent game, but nothing crazy. 6 for 62. And he made a comparison that really spoke to me, Nick, that Jacoby Brissett is the new Dalton. And, of course, Nick Wesseling's brother, Chris Wesseling, of whom this studio is named after, came up with the Dalton scale, the guy who rises and falls based on the talent around him and doesn't take anything off the table. If you have someone better than him, you have a franchise quarterback. If you don't, you need to look for one. He's right at that line now, and maybe that's enough for the Patriots to at least scrape out more wins than 4.5, like everyone was expecting going into the year.
Yeah, and knowing this about Jacoby from his previous stops, that's why I completely understood why they chose him as their starter going into the start of the season. Because the thing is like, you can get Drake May out there at any point. There's no need to rush him out there when you have a veteran who can do this in games like this and sneak out a couple wins that maybe most people didn't expect you to get. So it makes a ton of sense, and it's exactly how he played on Sunday in Cincinnati. I mean, he handled the game really well. I was very proud of him as he operated that offense. Because let's face it, like, Ramondre had a great game, but like the passing game still leaves a little bit to be desired. But the beauty of it, Greg, I still think on the defensive side of the ball with the Patriots is the fact that the Bengals never got out of first gear. I mean, there were multiple possessions where Joe Burrow's running for his life, and like the gains are small, and it's all checkdowns, and it's everything short. And I'm thinking, man, This is way better than I thought they would be in week 1 from a defensive perspective.
Well, I mean, it's the same coaches. There's still even a Belichick on the staff. Gerard Mayo was there. He did a great job last year. And when they kept paying everyone this offseason, and unfortunately, their best player on defense in my mind is Christian Barmore, who's out with blood clots, but they were all good players. Like, it was like, people were like, why are they bringing back all these players? I was like, because those are their best players. You want to keep them. Like Kyle Duggar, who had that forced fumble. So that part of it doesn't shock me. It's also week 1, and week 1 can lie. I get that. But I do think it's a big deal, no matter how this season goes, even if they only end up with 5 or 6 wins, to have that moment, that first sort of buy-in where you get a tough road victory. This is not the type of victory they were getting the last couple of years, and they got one in week 1. I'm excited about it.
You should be.
Also excited about Caleb Williams and what he's going to bring to my life as a person who enjoys watching Bears games, and yet he wasn't really at the center of a Bears victory on Sunday.
Bears stack the line of scrimmage. Are they blitzing? They are. Gordon coming to. Levis swallowed up, gets rid of it at the last second, and it is intercepted. Down the sidelines to the 20, to the 10, to the 5, to the end zone. Tyreek Stevenson for the lead in the fourth quarter. Will Levis under heat just flipped it in the air. The easiest pick 6 you're going to find for Tyreek Stevenson.
Oh, Will Levis. Like, what are you doing, Will Levis?
Gives and he takes away.
What are you doing, Will Levis? You had a lead. You had a chance. That was one of 2 touchdowns scored by the Bears that were not scored by the Bears offense. We also got a punt return touchdown by Jonathan Owens. Yes, the star of Hard Knocks, because he's Simone Biles' wife. We'll hear that call in a little bit. Patrick, I don't know where to go in this game because Caleb Williams goes 14 for 29 for 93 yards, so I don't want to go there first. Give me something else first.
Okay, well, here it was. A game of big plays by the Bears that overshadowed a solid ground game by the Tennessee Titans, both Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears averaging over 5 yards a carry. The problem is they only had 2 attempts between the 2 of them. There were the 2 interceptions by Will Levis, but there was just a period there in the second half of the game, third quarter, early fourth quarter, where the Bears just hit the Titans with giant play after giant play. You saw that pick 6 coming off of Will Levis just kind of floating the ball out there, trying to flip it away. Pick 6. There was a 50-yard field goal from Cairo Santos after Will Levis got strip sacked by Darrell Taylor. TJ Edwards recovered that. The block punt. There was just so much, but Caleb had an opportunity to hit Keenan Allen early in the first half. He overthrew him for a touchdown. Then right at the end of the first half, Keenan Allen is running it out on the goal line from the slot. Caleb puts in the perfect position. He drops that. I think Bears fans feel a little bit different, but they're going to be over the moon regardless with a win in Caleb's first game. He says he only cares about the win, not stats.
Well, let's hear him say that. Caleb Williams after the game.
You said you don't care about stats as long as you win.
Yeah, don't care about stats. I feel great. I'll be honest with you. I feel great. I understand that obviously the stats weren't where I wanted them to be and things like that because I want to go out there and perform to the best of my ability and didn't do that today. And so we're going to get better tomorrow. We got this little period, these next 15 hours or so, and then you reset, you get ready for Houston next week. And so, we're going to enjoy this win. I'm going to go dinner with my family, hang out with them, and then from there, get back into it and get ready to go. We're going to be better next week.
Yeah, the passing stats in this game are crazy. Will Levis and Caleb Williams combined shook for about 50% completions and somewhere between 3 and 4 yards per attempt. They were actually pretty similar numbers. The difference was Levis made 2 big mistakes with the 2 interceptions. At least Caleb Williams was clean, but the Bears offense only had 148 yards total in this game, which if you put that into last season would have been I can just say this without even checking, would have been a bottom 10 offensive game that any team had all season, maybe bottom 5.
Yeah, it's not often that you look at an NFL game and you see that both offenses failed to combine for 400 yards of total offense. I mean, it's just mental math off the top of the head. They flirted with it, but they didn't quite get past that. So you kind of know what you're dealing with here. But at the same time, this is the beauty of the NFL, and not just speaking from a Bears or Titans perspective. a game like that, if you just find ways to hang around, you keep chipping away, you hit a couple of field goals, you take it from 17-10 to 17-13 to 17-16, boom, breaks your way, and you get a pick six. That's the beauty of being able to watch these games in this league, and for the Bears, it paid off.
Let's listen to the call on the return that Jonathan Owens had.
Stonehouse back deep to our left. DeAndre Carter. Pressure blocked on the ground. Picked up to the 10, to the 5, to the end zone for the touchdown on the block punt by the Bears. Jonathan Owens, welcome to Chicago.
That's WMVP Jeff Joniak and Tom Thayer. And yeah, it was 17-3 at that point, Patrick. And I guess the defense did the rest of the job, because if you look at the pressure numbers in this game, the Bears especially, even without having a big performance from Montez Sweat, whether it was Sweat, Gervon Dexter, Andrew Billings, DeMarcus Walker, guys that we don't really know that much about, but they were pressuring Will Levis quite a bit.
Yeah, and under pressure in this game, Will Levis was 5 of 13, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, with a 38% completion percentage. The Bears defense was all over him, but those plays kind of tell the story of the game, because first of all, what better way for Jonathan Owens, the former Packer, to ingratiate himself to the people of Chicago than having this return touchdown in Caleb Williams' first game? But just play after play that they made, and Tennessee, after playing so well, like Shook said, the margins are just so thin.
Week 1 is ugly. Like a lot of these games, just you even saw it with the best teams on Thursday and Friday night. Those are good teams that played on both those days. It's sloppy. It's different. You just try to escape with a win. Our producer Eric Roberts says we have a funny still of our guy Will Levis. So if you're watching this show, I want to see this still. I haven't seen it. It's him kneeling after the interception with his hands clasped behind his head. That is the picture
Surrender Cobra.
of a man who has said, "What have I done? I've thrown away a beautiful start, a beautiful upset to start the season." So the Bears start their season on track, 1-0. Let's take another break and get to the rest of these games. Oh, yeah. Back on NFL Daily, and for the first time all season, let's go across the sidewalk where it was 100 degrees today. It was the hottest game in the history of Dodger Stadium, not too far away today. It was a recipe for emotions to be lost, to get a little out of control, and that happened over at SoFi Stadium in a Chargers victory over the Raiders.
Matlock and Edwards get a breather. Dobbins checks back in on this 3rd and 6. In the right pocket of Herbert. Herbert to throw. And has him on the crosser. It's McConkey. Shuffle. Touchdown. Oh, lad.
Yes.
10-yard touchdown toss. And he broke 2 sets of ankles on that touchdown grab. What a play for the rookie.
He hit the brakes and watched the plane fly right by, and then another plane flew by, and he skipped into the end zone.
Oh, what a call. That's my first nominee for Call of the Year. What a way to start our Chargers season. That, of course, was Matt Money Smith, our friend and guest on NFL Daily, our friend Daniel Jeremiah, who does do a pretty good job at this football broadcasting thing. They were on KYSR. Lad McConkey with some moves there gets the score from Justin Herbert to extend the lead to 22-10, and the Chargers come from behind in a game that I don't think, Shook, Jim Harbaugh could have scripted any better. They had 2 first downs in the first half. I don't think he wanted any more first downs, because he wanted a game where he could talk about we're manly men who grind them down and run the ball down their throats by the end of the game, and that's what happened.
Yeah, I mean, he's lost the ability to use the Michigan man term for himself, so he's got to find something else, right? I'm just glad. First off, I have 2 questions. One, when it's that hot out in the greater Los Angeles area, does Money's voice, get deeper than it already is? And great. Secondly, a big tip of the hat to him for saying, "Oh, lad," because I tweeted, "Oh, my lad," as soon as he made that play. So I was like, all right, same wavelength. But yeah, this does fit the Harbaugh, approach. Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers, they are embodying his approach. primarily because they were just offensively bad in the first half. It's a good Raiders defense, and they went 3 and out a few times, and there wasn't a lot to talk about, and yet they stayed in the game. And that was the key there, was staying in the game and then pulling away. I need to point out real quick one big moment. I thought it was a big moment in this player's trajectory over his career. J.K. Dobbins, guy has been through the ringer health-wise in the last couple of years. He rips off a long run to set them up for that touchdown pass to Ladd McConkey. And as he's taking off and breaking away into the clear, I'm thinking, there's no way he's getting there. He's definitely getting caught. But what a moment for J.K. Dobbins, for everything he's gone through over the last few years, to be here now, playing for the coach that used to coach at his rival college. They're putting it all together and getting a win.
And doing it with 13 yards per carry. You look at and you think, well, Greg Roman, Jim Harbaugh, they're just going to grind and run it out. And that's what they did in the second half. But J.K. Dobbins did all this damage with just 10 carries. He hit those 2 big plays. I think the first one was for 46 yards, and then he hit the 61-yarder in the second half. And it was just, they did nothing. The only reason they got 3 in the first half was because Gardner Minshew tried to check up on a pass that he was throwing to the flat, ends up throwing it behind himself in this one of these comical type hilarity things that has caused me to wonder how long Gardner Minshew may be starting for the Las Vegas Raiders. Another performance like this, and I think we're going back to Aaron O'Connell.
He finishes 25 for 33. So that wasn't the 4th down play that you're talking about on Minshew, right? Because there was a few weird ones. There was a 4th down where the Chargers 0 blitzed. They had the lead, I believe, at that point, and he just kind of held on to the ball. Actually, it might have been when it was 9-7. He holds on to the ball. They're trying to be aggressive. They were maybe in field goal range, and that's been his bugaboo of just not making quick decisions, holding on to the ball. And then his day wasn't over until late in the game where we had one of the more enjoyable interceptions, I believe, of the day.
Khalil and Bud out there as your edge. Minshew has time, pump fake, swatted in the air, intercepted, Poona Ford, the biggest man on the field. And as well as he had played the run all day today, give it to the 320-pound, 5'11" refrigerator. Mack got his hand on it. Ford intercepts it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what you call salt in the wound.
That is awesome. Poona Ford getting it done. Joey Bosa had a monster day. And, yeah, again, not a lot of offense, not a lot of passing. Justin Herbert with 144 yards in this game. And let's just talk quickly about Antonio Pierce. He had a 4th and 1 situation at the Chargers' 43-yard line, down 1. So at this point, it's only or down 1 score, rather, late in the game. And he decides to punt it at the 43-yard line on 4th and 1 with 7 minutes to go. What year is this? That is something they would even be going for in like 1995, 2005. Like, you had to go back to the 70s to pass up that 4th and 1. Let's listen to Pierce try to defend it after the game.
Yeah, no, we was considered going for it as a long one. I mean, got stopped earlier in the game, momentum. Punter had done a good job, pinning those guys back. I think we had 2 or 3 points. I think 3 punts inside the 20. Again, defense was the strength for the most part of the game. Keep them back to over 3 timeouts.
Like 5 plays later, the game was over. The 61-yard J.K. Dobbins run was just a couple plays later. So they punt it. It's 7 minutes left. You have to get a stop to even have another chance. It's a 4th and 1, Patrick Claybon.
Yeah, and this feels like a 4th and 1 that Antonio Pierce, and the way that the Raiders were built and the mindset they seemed to have last year after he got the job, would have gone for 100% of the time.
Yeah,
I think
interesting.
The head coach might have been influenced again by the fact the Chargers had 2 first downs in the entire first half, and the only reasons that they had the points that they did was because the quarterback threw the ball backwards. Maybe that played into believing that they could get the ball back and get a stop versus the way his offense was operating.
In fairness, though, they had given up a long field goal drive and a 6-play, 61-yard touchdown drive earlier in the half. So the defense had, that's a defensive coach. It's why I'm always a little afraid of a defensive coach's should.
Yeah, but at the same time, man, you cannot justify that to me as it was a long one. Like, yeah, I understand leaning on your defense, but for the love of God, it's 2024. Maybe he was in the house that, the former Chargers regime, they love to go for it in really unorthodox situations. So maybe he said, I'm going to go in the opposite direction and not go for it in a situation when every analytical analytical mind is screaming at the TV, pounding the table, go for it.
Yeah, and I mentioned how some emotions got cranked up in the heat. David Ely, in our newsroom, was watching to see if there were any like fan fights because there was just with the heat. We were looking outside, we didn't see anything, but the players did fight. There was a pretty real deal fight towards the end of this game. Jack Jones was one of the players ejected, which goes against my NFL Daily bump theory that J.K. Dobbins got, because both of them were guests on NFL Daily. But Jack Jones, I thought, had a good game. Other than that, I think Josh Palmer also got ejected, so we'll see if there's any suspension, anything like that. Also, I thought it was weird. Tony Romo and Jim Nantz were on this game, like a 4:05 game on CBS between two teams. It was almost like they saw Tom Brady there at 4:25 and they didn't want to compete.
Oh, you think they're ducking?
I'm just gonna say it. They're just like, hey, we don't want that heat this week. We're gonna let Tom.
Maybe they should get it next time.
you know who got it? The Minnesota Vikings. They got it good. The Vikings went to the Meadowlands, and they put one on the Giants.
1st and 10 for the Vikings from the Giants 21. Darnold, shotgun, puts Justin Jefferson in halo motion to the right. J.J. started in the backfield. Darnold is going to throw to the end zone. Man wide open, caught. Touchdown, Vikings! Jalen Naylor with his 2nd career touchdown. Sam has thrown 2 today, and the Vikings lead 20-3.
That's Paul Allen of KFAN, the great Paul Allen, who once owned a horse with Mike Zimmer, we found out last week. And Mike Zimmer's feelings were so hurt when Paul Allen dared to mention that he pushed Kirk Cousins, that Mike Zimmer then made Paul Allen sell his share of the horse. He kept the horse. What a story. And they haven't spoken since. Mike Zimmer.
Mike Zimmer stole his horse.
I mean, why hold so many grudges, Mike Zimmer? Who doesn't love Paul Allen? Who doesn't love Sam Darnold? I mean, I don't. I'm not going to love this season if Sam Darnold keeps playing like this. Shook. He finishes 19 of 24 for 208 yards and 2 touchdowns. Just because all the Darnold hype is going to make me eat my words, because it sounds like he played pretty well today.
Well, I mean, I'm already drawing some flack from Vikings fans for saying that he wasn't perfect early in this game, even though he went 15 for his first 17 attempts. He ended up being really great. The only reason I was talking about him not being perfect is there was a few moments of hesitation early in the game that took me back to his Jets days and seeing ghosts, and I was like, no, Sam, you've grown beyond that. Get beyond that. Be the better player that you can be. And he was. He was dialed in. He was pretty composed. He extended the play with his legs a little bit. He was on target. He didn't look like he was overwhelmed. And his touchdown pass, first, the one on 4th and goal from the 2, I thought was almost more impressive than the one to Naylor, because he sees Justin Jefferson lined up in single coverage with Deontay Banks on the outside, knows he's throwing the slant, and just puts it right in his stomach and fired it in there. I was like, oh, there's that arm strength that I remember from USC. And that's kind of the way he played this entire game. Hits Jefferson down the sideline with a really nice completion for 44. He hits a tight end over the middle down the seam. That was probably the most impressive throw outside of that touchdown pass that I've seen. I mean, I was like, whoa, look at the confidence. He stepped up and let it rip. So it was a beautiful start to the season for Sam Darnold. But again, it also came against the Giants, who have an improved defense. Dexter Lawrence is an absolute menace and was a problem all day. And actually, credit to Sam again on that touchdown pass to Naylor. He stood there and took a hit from Dexter Lawrence. He knew it was coming and still put it on him. But again, it is week 1. It does lie. But I was very happy for Sam in his first game as a starter of the Vikings.
Yeah, and a beautifully called game by Kevin O'Connell as well. Sam makes that nice throw to Justin Jefferson. Then on the touchdown to Naylor, it's a fake bubble to Justin Jefferson where every Giant and probably every Giant fan in MetLife is locked on to 18, and Darnold comes off of him and comes back for the touchdown. Aaron Jones had a score as well, but it's hard to look at this game and not get the visual of Phil Simms and Eli and LT in the pregame and the Giants in the throwbacks and MetLife going nuts. And then Dimes comes out and is absolutely putrid. And Giants fans are going to have to remember that.
Yeah, Nick, after the game, Brian Dable, their coach, was already asked if he's thinking about benching Daniel Jones, which he said no, that is not entering my mind. But, yeah, 2 interceptions, 186 yards. And Patrick mentioned it. They're celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Giants being a team. And this is a tough way to celebrate.
No, you kind of had a feeling as soon as you can't just skip the year. It's the 100th anniversary and you're going to go through with everything. But yeah, you kind of knew they were going to set themselves up for this type of day at some point, considering the state of their team. Daniel Jones, when he had time and was comfortable, put some passes on target. It's just that for the majority of the day, he looked frazzled. He looks like the Daniel Jones that we all know. And he'll make the boneheaded mistake. And it was a great play by Andrew Van Ginkel to pick him off Jack Jones style for the fastest interception, fastest pick six in the last year or two, according to Next Gen Stats. But
let's listen to that one. That was one of the more fun plays of the day. Let's listen.
All right.
Go Titans. Go Will Levis. And here comes Daniel Jones, 12 of 22 for 111 yards. Vikes lead 21-6. Jones. Oh, he threw it to Van Ginkel. Touchdown! That's the 4th touchdown in Andrew Van Ginkel's career. And he read Daniel Jones like a book. And that book had a happy ending. 27-6, Minnesota.
And that's not the first time he's done that.
That is awesome. And just for a little context there, yeah, they were coming back from a score break on the radio. So that's fun hearing Paul Allen enjoy Will Levis. And wow, what a play. Van Ginkel was with Flores in Miami. And yeah, this is just a team. These are two teams that you're like, I don't know about these teams this year. And yet today, Shook, they didn't seem like they were in the same area code, really, of like their potential.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think the Giants defense will carry them to be competitive in some games. It's just as long as Daniel Jones doesn't bury them. But I do want to just point out one thing. Paul Allen's 0 to 100 is among the most enjoyable things I've experienced, audio speaking. Like it just, and they're here. It's 1st and 10. Oh, touchdown. Like, that's just great. That's
awesome.
Fantastic.
Malik Neighbors gets 5 for 66 in his first NFL game, so he was their leading receiver. Solid.
He's a guy. He's a guy, Greg. He's definitely a guy.
Justin Jefferson, of course, back from the injury, 4 for 59 with a touchdown. Jordan Addison had an ankle injury in this game. Our guy, Ian Rappaport, his initial reports indicate it's not believed to be anything major, but there's gradations of this, so we'll have to see what it is after he gets more tests. But a great opening week win for the Vikings, and their schedule gets really hard after this. So I thought this was an important game for them. And as you mentioned, Patrick, Aaron Jones getting it done, 14 for 94 on the ground and a touchdown. That is a sight for sore eyes for Vikings fans who have not seen an effective running game for a couple of seasons. Let's go down to a game that I feel like wasn't really on the radar for most people, even though it featured the number 2 overall pick in the NFL draft making his first start, but he was not the star on Sunday.
See if we can punch in points with a touchdown, leading 6-0. White shifts into the backfield, dropping Baker, throws a sideline route. It is caught ball. Mike Evans with a guy draped all over him. Touchdown Tampa Bay. Fire the cannons, get him going.
Love Gene.
That was Gene Deckerhoff for the first time this season on WFUS. And yeah, Mike Evans is a special player. I mean, that was an incredible catch. Nice throw by Baker Mayfield, who finishes with 4 touchdowns on the day, 289 yards. And yeah, I got a text during the day from our friend Jordan Rodriguez, who was lucky enough to watch the early games as she's waiting for this Rams games to start in Detroit. And she's just like, Mike Evans makes me feel things. He is just like an extraordinary football player.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was thinking it watching the game, death, taxes, Mike Evans. Benjamin St. Juste was fighting for his life on that touchdown if you're watching on YouTube. And Mike Evans comes through with the catch. He gets St. Juste later on in the game, and it overshadows Baker Mayfield's performance, 24 of 30, 289, 4 touchdowns. A really good first game from Jaden Daniels, but our concerns about the Commanders come through because the defense could not get off the field. They could not stop Tampa Bay through the air. But Jaden Daniels has 2 touchdowns on the ground, 17 of 24 through the air for 184 yards, completes 70% of his passes.
Okay.
But it's like it didn't even happen because Baker and company were just melting through the Commanders all game.
His fantasy owners got to be happy. I mean, that's Lamar Jackson numbers, 88 and 2 on the ground with the passing. But just looking at the box score, Patrick, you watch this one a little more closely to me. It does point out, well, first of all, I don't think they're very talented on defense, and you're going up against really talented receivers in Chris Godwin and Evans and Jalen McMillan, who I've been excited about, had a long touchdown in this game too.
He could have had 2. Also, there was one that just went out of his reach that was one of Baker's few misses in this game.
And then you look at the wide receivers for who Jaden's throwing to, Luke McCaffrey leads the way with 3 catches for 18 yards. Terry McLaurin gets 17. De'Ami Brown, who I think was maybe he got hurt, but he he's not even in the mix. Alameda Zacchaeus, like just not getting anyone involved. When Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson and Zach Ertz are your leading receivers, that's not a recipe. But we should talk positive because I like this Bucs team a lot. Your guy Baker shook, and when I say a lot, I think there could potentially be a 9-10 win team. They were my pick to win this division, and I'm not going to crown them after 1 week. But one of the reasons is just like they have pretty deep top tier talent, and they have pretty good continuity. Like that's a nice combination.
Yeah, so like going into the season, I was just concerned because I didn't know what this offense would look like without Dave Canales at play caller, because I just thought he was a big reason why Baker had the career year he had last year. And it is only 1 week, and week 1 lies and everything else, but this is really encouraging to see from Baker, and I do think you're exactly right. It's a product of a quarterback with a rapport with very talented receivers just going to work and making it happen against a defense that lacks talent. Because Dan Quinn is the head coach, and he should lead some sort of defensive turnaround eventually. But if you don't have the players, you don't have the players. And when you're facing receivers like this, like you just said, there's going to be a difference. It's just good. It's good to see Baker pick up where he left off. You know, he's gotten paid now. And week 1, at least, he picked up right where he left off.
Yeah, and a lot of it was, the short stuff. That's what he does very often is, 19 for 23 for 184 yards on the short stuff for 2 touchdowns, but it was very effective. And when he needs to throw the ball deep, he could. I'm concerned about this Washington team, but I don't want to overreact after 1 game.
Slight concerns for the Bucs run game. Bucky Irving led the team, but there were a couple of long runs that kind of skewed those numbers. They really had difficulty getting things going. Rachaad White had 15 carries for 31 yards. He was involved in the pass game as well. But it's tough to nitpick problems for a Bucs team that took their feet off the game. They could have scored 40+ in this game.
That is fascinating to me because Rachaad White, I don't know what he did to the next gen people, but like whenever you look at rush yards over expected, it's Rachaad White's always got that biggest negative on the board, and today he was minus 32 somehow. But I don't feel like he's that bad, but whatever that metric measures, it doesn't work out for them, and they have not been a good run blocking team in years, and they haven't been a good running team in years.
I do have to ask the NGS team about that because there were a couple of plays where Rachaad White's getting the ball on like a deep handoff, and there are 2 defenders in his face, and he loses 5 yards.
That can't be the ones that go.
I'm just wondering, like, what was the expected yard Rachaad White was supposed to get on that play?
Yeah, so the Commanders will need to go back to the drawing board, need a little more juice. Bucs get off to a great start. They're at 1 game ahead of the Falcons, but they're not in first place by their lonesome in the NFC South because there was another team that put up a crooked score. It was down in New Orleans where everything is great again.
3rd and 4 for the Saints. Ball sitting at their own 41, moving right to left towards Poitras. Out of a shotgun is Carr. Panthers bring 4. Carr stands now, fires it deep, middle of the field. Rashid Shaheed. See you later. Bye. Touchdown, New Orleans. Rashid Shaheed, middle of the field, post pattern, 64 yards, and a perfect pass from Carr as he gets it out past J.C. Horn to Rashid Shaheed. That's how you start.
That was Mike Haas of WWL. Derek Carr going deep. Derek Carr making plays. Like all the things that you kill Derek Carr for, which is like, he doesn't go deep enough. He just, dinks and dunks. Like, that was beautiful. He doesn't really make anything happen on his own. I mean, there was a no, yes touchdown to Foster Moreau a little later in that half. And, like, everything that has been wrong about the Saints offense looked right in this game. Now, they did play against a defense that's undermanned, but I don't care. Last year's Saints team, Patrick, weren't putting up 47 points in any game. And they weren't looking like this at any point in the last couple of years. So every time I tweeted out something positive about the Saints, like, oh yeah, look who they're playing. It's like, yeah, they played them last year a couple times too. They didn't put up many points on the board. This was different. They scored on 9 straight possessions to start the game. That's preposterous.
Clint Kubiak could levitate around the streets of New Orleans at any point over the next week. People could carry him. It was that explosive. And you mentioned that no, yes. Like I'm looking at the TV and Derek Carr had an option to run.
Yes.
But then he pops up, throws the ball to Foster Moreau, who mosses a Carolina Panther. Rashid Shaheed beat J.C. Horn on that long touchdown. Olave had a great block that sprung Alvin Kamara, who had a nice game as well. They were just going up and down the field to contrast with the Panthers struggling yet again, where it's the Canales era is starting to feel very similar.
Well, okay, it's one
week
game.
one
It's
again.
It's one game. Let's stay positive, Shook, and talk a little Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara hasn't seen holes like this to run through since that 5-touchdown game on Christmas. Was that 6 touchdowns or 5 touchdowns? I don't know.
It was 6. It should have been 7, but for some reason,
that's right.
Sean gave Taysom 1.
And at that, give Taysom 1. That's fine. Taysom Hill, by the way, very involved in this game. I was hoping that he would be. 5 rushes. I think he's more of a running back. He's listed at tight end. Played a little tight end, little fullback, but only had 2 targets for 1 yard as a pass catcher. 5 runs for 35 yards, but Kubiak is having fun with him in the way that you could see Kyle Shanahan and Kubiak using Kyle Juszczyk last year. And I'm thinking about a very specific play where the motion before the play with Taysom Hill in the backfield, I think it might have been Jamal Williams on that play too in the backfield, totally scrambled the Panthers, and it frees up Jawan Johnson for a touchdown. So I think Kubiak had an extraordinary game. I know it was against the Panthers, but everything made sense for the first time in a while for this Saints offense.
Well, yeah, window dressing. And hey, look, the fullback or the H-back is back. If you don't know that, you know now with the way that they're using Taysom Hill. It's just, I think to me, it's refreshing because we slogged through last year with these Saints. I mean, it was a trudge every week. I'm just stuck in the mud watching Derek Carr refuse to throw to Chris Olave and not look down the field unless it's out of desperation. And then they put 47 on the board today. You're right. It's against the Panthers. Take it with a grain of salt and everything else. But it's just so encouraging because then this means the Saints might be watchable. This means the Saints might be able to compete for the division. Sure. Even if it's only 1 game. I mean, if they have this offense.
Right. Look, they tied for the division win last year. It gets a little lost. The Bucs won it on the tiebreaker. It's not like there was some huge gap between them. I do want to hear the call just because I'm curious of Jamal Williams' first official touchdown as a Saint that didn't involve an insurrection against his coach.
1st and 10. Ball sitting at the 14. Knocking on the door for more. Toss outside left side. Jamal Williams inside the 10. 5. Jamal Williams. Week 18. Touchdown last year. Not this time, baby. Week 1. He had 17 touchdowns when he came to New Orleans, but it took all of last year. We know how he scored it. Don't matter now, but that was a big run for Jamal Williams. 14 yards as he gets on the board. Week 1.
That is awesome. I don't know if Jamal Williams looked that spry in this game. I did watch that. 11 carries, 38 yards. But you saw some nice holes for both running backs, and that was big. We should mention, Bryce Young struggled. 13 for 30, 161 yards, 2 interceptions. Really disappointing for those of us, Patrick. I think basically anyone with a heart and who just likes football that wanted to see a better start out of him, certainly under a ton of pressure in this game. The offensive line could not pick up the blitzes. It was a great game plan by Dennis Allen. Alontae Taylor, very active, getting sacks as a slot corner and also in coverage. Then again, the interceptions weren't great. One was just a poor overthrow and the other one was a bad decision. So back to the drawing board.
And I think we could say it like the 1-2 Deontay Johnson, the very first pass of the season. I don't know if Deontay was felt that pass coming. Looked like he could have got his hands up around and on it before it got into the secondary. But in terms of it's hard to get a lot of talent at the corner position. The Saints have it.
Oh, yeah.
This is a very good defense going up against a familiar opponent in week 1 on the road. It's very easy to have these over. You look at your Twitter timeline. It's over for Bryce. His career is finished. It's in the tank. Yeah, I don't necessarily buy into that, but there's clear places that this offense needs to improve, and we're going to get another crack at it next week.
Yeah, and this playmaking Saints defense, we'll see against different competition, but I think it has a chance here. Tyrann Mathieu talked a big game coming into the season, gets a forced fumble early in this game. Marshawn Lattimore was a little banged up and left. It's not believed to be anything serious initially, so Kool-Aid McKinstry came in for a few extra snaps there. We're going to take one final break before we wrap up the show with the Broncos and the Seahawks. This was a fun one, and then Sunday Night Football. Back on NFL Daily, I am excited to wrap up our Week 1 recap show with my favorite part of the week, where I honk about Geno Smith and the incredible season this Seattle Seahawks team is going to have. And this was a wild one, but they got the win in one of the most Geno ways possible, making a throw where there really wasn't a window there.
Here comes Tyler Lockett. He's slotted on the left side. Charbonnet is wide to the left, almost to the sidelines. Be a great place to just throw a little pass to Tyler. And Tyler, he one-hands it! Holy catfish! Tyler Lockett, you make me look like a prophet, buddy. Just a little crossing route. The ball was too far out in front. And yet he reaches out with one hand and makes the catch. A 9-yard gain. Holy smokes.
That was Geno Smith to Tyler Lockett. And yeah, that only shows up in the box score as a short right pass for 9 yards. And yet it was incredible because Lockett needed such strong hands to catch a pass that had about a 1-inch window to get through. And if they didn't complete it, they were punting back to Bo Nix and the Broncos. And I didn't have much faith that the Broncos and Bo Nix were going to go on a touchdown drive to win the game. But I was pretty surprised that Bo Nix and the Broncos had a touchdown drive just previously to make it even competitive, because the Seahawks defense was absolutely dominant in this game. The Broncos defense was pretty dominant in the first half too, but then Geno and the running game got it going. 26-20. Seahawks get the victory, survive a scare, Nick, that included 2 safeties by the Broncos in the first half. This was the first game in 7 years where one defense had 2 safeties. Usually that would happen in a win, but this one happened in a loss for the Broncos.
Usually that also requires some strange field position management where you have to pin them deep enough to have that opportunity.
They had 2 drives start at the 1-yard line, and it was
there you go.
It was a theme to the first half. The Seahawks offensive line is going to be a problem, and was an extremely big problem in the first half of this game. And very typically for how this first half went, they got stuffed for a loss on a running play for the second safety and had a holding penalty. They had penalties. Geno was just getting absolutely manhandled, and the field position was outrageous in this game. The Broncos were averaging starting at midfield, and the Seahawks kept being at the 1 and everything, and that's how you get a very weird 10-9 lead early for the Broncos, but the Seahawks end up finally getting it back.
And Seahawks fans, they will relate with me. In fact, I'm relating with you. Who better for it to happen to than the Seahawks, the team that is always in the most unusual games in the NFL, and yet they find a way to come back and win against a Broncos team that, was scrappy. And if it wasn't for a really bad Bo Nix interception that also produced one of the best, natural reaction calls on air on network television, then maybe it would have been even closer. But look, it's a good way for them to rekindle this weird week 1 thing that they have in the schedule makers. They did it a couple of years ago. They're doing it again, totally different fashion. And they come away with a win. It's good for them. And for somebody who's ready to get rid of Tyler Lockett, Greg, you were really on the table there for that play.
I'm not getting rid of that is twisting my words in a million different ways. Tyler Lockett leads them in receiving, 6 for 77. What I said was I think this is going to be the last time this group is together, and that's just looking at the economics of the NFL and that Tyler Lockett's getting older. Maybe not. Maybe he'll be one of those guys who signs slightly below market deal and stays there forever like Doug Baldwin did, and I hope that happens because they really needed him today. DK Metcalf had a tough day, couple near catches. Patrick Surtain did a good job against him. Let's actually listen to that call you mentioned about Bo Nix because I want to get into a little bit of a Bo Nix discussion before we move on.
Denver playing with all 3 timeouts. 5:35 left. They're down 13. Nix.
Oh, no.
Has all day, but it's intercepted. Picked off by Woolen. Second interception thrown by the rookie Nix.
See, take lessons from former Rams safety Adam Archuleta there on the call, Tom Brady. Just react. Just be you and be real. That ball is in midair, crossing the line of scrimmage, and Adam Archuleta sees Tariq Woolen screaming across the field. It's, oh no, as he comes underneath and undercuts for that interception. Where Bo Nix was, if you were going to describe quarterbacks only through the memes attributed to him, this was a very Bo Nix game.
Well,
his yards per completion exceedingly low. He throws the ball 42 times for 138 yards. Nevertheless,
I mean, he didn't have many games like that's like what was it? Auburn Bo Nix? What was his first school?
Yeah, he started it.
That was Auburn Bo Nix. That was not Oregon Bo Nix, right?
Oh yeah, no, Oregon Bo Nix is lightening up, but still, a lot of attempts, keeping it very close, very efficient around the line of scrimmage. But you wanted him to attempt balls, 10, 15 yards down the field. But whenever he did, the Seahawks defenders would get a hand on.
Oh, it was a disaster. This was the worst performance any quarterback had. 2 for 12 on throws over 10 yards. You're making a face. Shook, I watched every snap of this game. On throws over 10 yards, 2 of 12 for 42 yards and 2 interceptions. The crazy thing is, if you look at all of his different splits, they all add up to numbers like that. There's no split that doesn't have him averaging under 3 yards per attempt. He had 1.5 yards per attempt on his first 15 attempts. And the reason why it was tough to watch, and the reason why I believe Archuleta says, oh, no, and it was Spiro Ditas on the call there as the play-by-play guy, former NFL Network
shout out
Total Access host. Maybe the first one. I could be wrong. Maybe that was Rich. Yeah. He was in the mix. I think he was saying no because he saw so many throws like that during the game. Yes, Nix only had 2 interceptions. When I used to chart for QB Index, I used to have a NP category, near picks. He had at least 4 to 5 picks that were dropped or that were touched by the Seahawks. So it could have been an even more disastrous day. It was pretty tough to watch. Pretty disappointing, I think, for Broncos fans that were pretty over their skis in the preseason, let's be real.
Yeah, and understandably so, because he kind of, he very much won that job in the preseason with his performance. Also, I'm going to have to open your mind on this QB Index charting, because NPs is a good idea. It's like unearned interceptions is like the flip side of near picks, as we kind of expand.
I counted picks in the NPs. It was just it was basically turnover-worthy plays, I guess. PFF copied me is how I look at it. And then you also have big throws. Throws other guys couldn't make. Nix does not put many of those on tape. I have to admit. And Geno, who was under duress and struggling in the first half, had a really nice half in the second half. But it was more about the run blocking. Ken Walker is just a great running back who looks to me like he's running with even more confidence and burst than ever. 20 for 103. Zach Charbonnet had a 30-yard reception. So thanks, Pete Carroll. You drafted running backs in the second round. Maybe it was John Schneider, but it's a great backfield. And Geno Smith actually got them going on offense with a 34-yard
longest of his career.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. He looks spry. He says he told the broadcast crew that he's faster than he's ever been in terms of his training. He's been timing it out, that he's more in shape. I believe it.
I'm glad he said it after the big run. Because
he said it before. No, he said it before.
Oh, well, never mind.
In like the broadcast meetings and whatnot. Yeah.
Ooh.
I hate it when you say something in a production meeting and then it comes true.
Yeah, not as fun. Seahawks get the win. They go to 1-0. Would their rival team in the NFC West, the LA Rams, join them there? To Sunday Night Football we go.
Here come the Lions out of the huddle and to the line. 1st and goal from the 1. The end zone will end it. Goff up under center. Single back Montgomery. Goff takes the snap, turns, gives to Montgomery, right side, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions. This game is over. Pack it up, boys. We're going home. An opening night victory for the Lions.
That was Dan Miller and Lomas Brown on WXYT. The Lions get it done in overtime, 26-20. An outstanding Sunday night football game to kick off the season and to wrap a beautiful slate of games on Sunday. Nick Shook still with me. Patrick Claybon has headed off. He's hosted a show in the morning on NFL Network. I'm going to read you, Shook, the plays that occurred in overtime in this game. And just tell me if you think this defines what Dan Campbell wants the Lions to be. Khalif Raymond, left end, 12 yards. Creative, great play. David Montgomery, right end, 21 yards. David Montgomery, left tackle, 9 yards. Jared Goff pass to Jahmyr Gibbs, 10 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs, left tackle, 3 yards. David Montgomery, up the middle, 6 yards. David Montgomery, up the middle, 8 yards. David Montgomery, right tackle, 1 yard, touchdown. They do not give the ball back to the Los Angeles Rams. They run it down the Rams' throats on a night in which previously they couldn't really run the ball. But when it came down to it on a long game, these players are tired. The Lions counted on that offensive line, which is really the bedrock of their team.
Yeah, it was a beautiful thing to see as just a football traditionalist. And, you know, Greg, as a former offensive lineman, because we don't want to kick slide and pass drop. We want to line up man on man and run block our tails off all the way to pay dirt. That's exactly what he said. You know what? I'm done. I'm done with all this nonsense. We let the Rams back in this game. We almost threw a pick here. We threw a pick there. We're running the football with our horses. And David Montgomery was the horse that would not quit. He was fresh. He ran people over. He ran through tackles. He refused to go down. So it was only fitting that when they were on the doorstep of the end zone, which, by the way, fresh take on the meaning of end zone, because it did end the game, and that kind of blew my mind for a half second there during that call. They went to David Montgomery for the game-sealing touchdown. A beautiful vision and just a beautiful sight to see.
Yeah, Rams fans have to be having flashbacks. If you're listening to this, it was just last year, at the end of last season, when you're hearing Dan Miller so excited with the call of the year when they win that playoff game against the Rams. It was such a similar game. This was 24-23. That was last season. This year it's 2020 going into overtime. The difference was the Rams made a furious comeback, as you mentioned, in this game. 17-3 late in the third quarter. The Lions are winning this game. And then the Rams get all the way back to a 20-17 lead off of a Cup touchdown late in the fourth quarter. They had a chance. They got the ball back to seal the game. They couldn't get enough first downs to bleed the clock. The Lions get Jake Bates a field goal to wrap up regulation. And then, they steamroll. There's something about Montgomery that just completes this team. As good as Jahmyr Gibbs is, I was so wrong about this Montgomery signing. I thought it was too much, and he just wasn't a special back, and that he was getting taken too early in fantasy leagues. And he was quiet in this game, as I mentioned. And then when it comes to closing it, he gets it done. Sometimes your takes, you just got to give up on them, Nick, when they're not going well. But some takes you hold on to forever if you believe in them, because eventually they might be right. My friend Adam Levitan over at Establish the Run, he says, never wrong, just early. And I've been just early on Jameson Williams. I've been waiting for him to pop. He was my wide receiver one in that class, which had Garrett Wilson and Olave and everything. Okay, it's year 3, though. That's when the receivers used to break out before this new NFL where everyone's good right away at wide receiver. And Jameson Williams, they say it's been a maturity issue and figuring out how you got to be a pro and everything like that. But he goes 5 for 121 and a touchdown. And he was the reason they had this big lead. 52-yard pass from Jared Goff where he burns Tre'Davious White in the third quarter, but also made some other nice plays throughout the course of the game. And they really need him to be not a number one because you have him on St. Brown, although he only had 13 yards tonight. That was weird for 3 catches. But you need him to be a high-quality receiver starter, and he showed he can step into that role.
Yeah, and he did so while exiting briefly with an injury too. Was able to come back and continue to contribute and made a nice catch in the second half that helped them get within field goal range, which was a crucial drive because before they knew it, suddenly they were trailing after seemingly dominating this game with a 2-touchdown lead. So having players like that is obviously huge for you. I mean, this kid was such a talent that he spent 1 year at Alabama and became their best receiver. And the only reason that he didn't, break out prior in college is because he was at Ohio State with Olave and Wilson and Harrison. Like that was an incredible receiving score. So now he finally gets the opportunity in year 3. He's with Jared Goff, who didn't have like a great night, but had a good enough night. 18 to 28, 217 yards and a touchdown. The Rams took away the middle of the field a lot, but good for Jameson Williams. He can operate on the outside, which is what he did at a high level. And it's the combination of everything is the beauty of the Lions, I think, because we look at them as a team that relies on their identity. So it's like, all right, let's throw the ball around the yard. Let's get Jameson Williams hot. We don't even have to lean on Amon-Ra St. Brown. Maybe they're taking him away. We can go somewhere else now, which is a strength to them. And then they get to overtime and they pound the ball on the ground. They get a big defensive stop right before the end of regulation too. That's a complete team. And
Yes.
Jake Bates hitting the field goal. That's a complete team with the third phase of the game coming in there. And that's why they're favored to win this division and make a deep run.
And yet, I think Dan Campbell, when he watches this film, will be disappointed overall.
Yeah.
They were lucky to escape with a win. The Rams had 13 more plays than the Lions. They dominated time of possession, and that's even including that great long overtime drive, which the Rams did not have a chance to match, despite having so many injuries. Let's go through them. Our friend Jordan Rodriguez sent some texts that I'm going to use during this portion of the show. She mentions they were on their second center, third technically, because who they started at center today had to move over to fill in the one of the guard spots. Their second right tackle and their third left tackle. Rob Havenstein, their swing tackle, ends up starting this game, leaving early with an injury. Alaric Jackson's out with a suspension. So you got a guy, A.J. Arcuri, at left tackle, and he's getting smoked play after play by Aiden Hutchinson. All these draft picks for the Lions coming through in a big spot. A sack to end regulation. Getting all over Stafford on a third down play, which could have potentially iced the game. He had a chance to throw it to Kupp to really burn the clock late in regulation. That didn't happen. And so that's going up against the third string left tackle. We got our second string right tackle who's given up a lot of pressures. And then the center, and Puka Nacua also leaves this game with a knee injury, which is very worrisome. It seems like he struggled to get fully back to 100%. They use him a lot early in this game. I mean, he had a bunch of catches, 4 catches, 35 yards, and then he leaves with an injury, and that leaves everything to Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford. And you know what? They almost got it done. 21 targets for Cooper Kupp. That's outrageous. That's
14
the most
catches.
That's the most of his career, and it's the most anyone I think has had. I need to check this in. I think more than anyone had all of last year at least. 14 catches, 110 yards, and just a gutty performance. He was in motion, according to Next Gen Stats, more in this game than any player that they've recorded. He touched the ball while in motion 12 times, which is more than any player they've ever recorded, which says to me like the whole game plan, the whole offense is built around Cooper Kupp and using these motions, and they made it work, especially with Puka Nacua out to the point where Cooper Kupp, yes, catches a go-ahead touchdown with 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and it looks like the Rams are going to pull off an improbable comeback.
First and goal from the 9. Rams back in the red zone under center. A chance to take the lead deep on Sunday Night Football. Play action, throw to the flat, Kupp at the 6, Kupp to the pylon, touchdown Cooper Kupp! Touchdown, LA! 9 and dime with a clutch direct deposits. A 19-17 lead with 4.5 to go.
Oh, J.B. Long, our great friend from KSBN. I mean, that is a game-winning call, Shook. The Rams' offense and defense just couldn't quite finish the deal after that to make it a game-winning call.
Yeah, get Bank of America on the line with the direct deposit call. That was fantastic out of JB. That this was the culmination of what I think a lot of teams wish they had. which is a coach with plenty of experience. We already know he's an offensive genius in Sean McVay, but also a veteran quarterback who has worked with this coach long enough to be on the same page. Because when you lose a guy like Puka Nacua, that could destroy some teams. Instead, McVay says, screw it. We're just going to motion Cooper Kupp back and forth to ID coverages and just pick them apart. And even with our backs against the wall, we're going to continue to stick to that. And yeah, we're going to feed him a lot, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we just have to go to him. It's just that he ends up being open. And it speaks to the rapport that they've established in their years together with the Rams. And the product was a furious comeback capped by something like that. And also a terrible series of events for Carlton Davis. I had a buddy, Buccaneers fan. He's like, is Carlton Davis even on the field for the Lions? And I was like, yes, he is. And he got caught in motion there and fell over twice, which left Cooper Kupp open to score. And then he drops an interception that would have been at the end of regulation. But man, it's a beautiful thing, again, to watch McVay, Stafford, and Kupp all work in tandem because they are on the same page and they are dangerous enough to wipe out your lead if you just give them a few possessions in the second half of a relatively close game.
Missed opportunity, though, because for this Rams team, these injuries aren't necessarily going away next week, and it's going to be a challenge, and this would have been a tough road win to get. And, yeah, you mentioned Carlton Davis dropped that ball from Stafford, which went right into his gut right at the end of regulation. That was a play where Kupp didn't seem like he knew the ball was coming, like he never looked around. And as great as they played, it just shows how tough the NFL is. As great as Stafford and Kupp play, I think they'll have a couple of regrets. As I mentioned, there was a third down play with about 2.5 minutes to go where Stafford had to step forward and there was a lot of pressure on the play. So you don't fault him for missing the throw, but if he just had a little more time, and he's such a good quarterback, I bet he wishes he just put a little more touch on it because he had Kupp streaking open. And if he had hit him, they almost certainly win that game. But yeah, that sequence to set up the Kupp touchdown was awesome. Again, Jordan points out how they sub Tutu Atwell in the play before, kind of signaling that they were going to do a deep shot, and then the defense ended up rotating to protect against that. Tutu runs the deep concept, but Stafford ends up hitting Kupp on the opposite side. So this is play sequencing. I get on McVay for not using timeouts at the right time or burning them at the wrong time. And yet you mentioned, Shook, they were kind of in a timeout stare down at the end of the game, which was interesting. Yeah. I didn't fault McVay, although it was weird. He still had 3 timeouts at the end of that second half, but it was understandable why that all happened. But just these two teams are two of the most fun teams in the league. It was a little bit of everything. And as great as the quarterbacks were, like Stafford threw a groaner of an interception at the end of the second quarter, and Goff, who inspired kind of a very tepid, like the Lions fans were a little tight at the end of this game when they were trying to come back. Yeah. There was a very quiet Jared Goff, but it really was. It was just like only a few people, because people were kind of worried because Jared Goff had just thrown an interception on the previous possession, and then he almost threw another one to Kobe Durant, who leaped for it and couldn't quite come down with it. And Dan Campbell, who has such a great feel of the moment, decided not to go for 4th and 5, I believe it was, in his own end when he wasn't guaranteed to get the ball back. He decided to punt it, just feeling how his offense was playing. And you know what? They did get the ball back, and just everything Dan Campbell throws out there just seems to turn into gold these days.
Yeah, they're making corn mazes out of him. He's in commercials now at restaurants about covering your mouth when you order. And then he goes out there and he feels it out properly, and he relies on his team and trusts them, and they produce for him. And that's why people love the Rams, because they can get behind a guy like Dan Campbell. They can get behind a player with a story like Jared Goff. And even in those moments where it's like, he's looking a little shaky, his comfort zone is not really where the Rams are allowing him to operate. Like the pick he threw to John Johnson, I mean, that's cover one robber. Like, he's sitting there. I don't know how Jared didn't see him, because he threw it right in that path.
Because he was coming back. Yeah, he got a little pressure. It was kind of typical Goff that he panicked a little bit. That was with 8 minutes left in the game when they had a lead and were trying to ice it, and it was really bad situational football by Goff.
And yet the fans, a little bit of a Jared Goff chant, like, we still believe you're still our guy. Like Dan said in the locker room after that playoff win, you're good enough for Detroit. Show us again. And he did. Well, David Montgomery did, but Jared got them down in range enough to kick the field goal to send it to overtime, which is a great outcome for the Lions.
Yes, Goff did bounce back and as you mentioned, had a good drive to get it to overtime. What a game. Happy for the Lions fans, because I think that would have crushed them a little more than was really necessary. They're going to be a good team. It's only week 1, and yet I think losing to Stafford in that way, such a big lead, they actually would have been like, oh no, are we going to turn back into a team.
We're the Lions again.
Right,
We're turning into a pumpkin
not
again.
That, but like, can we not handle it? It would have been a devastating loss for the Lions, so they get it done. It's a tough one for the Rams, but a tough spot on the road against the Lions with all of those injuries. They can't hang their head too much. Neither can you, Nick Shook. Appreciate you. We're going to do this every Sunday, shall we?
Every Sunday. So everybody who's listening right now, saddle up, get comfortable, pour yourself your favorite beverage, because we're doing this every week.
All right.
We'll recap all the games for you right here.
Don't get too comfortable, Shook. We're going to do Monday night football too tomorrow night. 49ers.
Of course, but I wanted to keep a surprise. I mean, come on.
Yes, we'll do some news, and we'll talk about the Jordan Love injury since we last taped. He's now out 3 to 6 weeks. We'll dive into that a little more, figure out what other injuries happened on Sunday, all the analysis, and obviously recap that great Monday night football game, 49ers and Jets. Your guy, David Njoku, fear there's a high ankle sprain there, so that won't be good for your Browns. But we'll save that for Monday. This has been a beautiful Sunday. Truly thank you all for joining us on NFL Daily, being part of the journey. I think now that we have a football Sunday under our back, we can finally say it. I mean, football is back.
It's back.